Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. This is Eight Sided Freaks. We are back with a pay-per-view preview, and we're going to do the typical pay-per-view preview schedule. We've got a 5-fight main card, and it is a great 5-fight main card. We have 2 title fights atop the bill, both of which are fights where we've got a fighter moving up a weight class looking to become a 2-division champion, and the 3 fights prior to those that make up the rest of this main card are all great fights as well. Some highly ranked fighters, in my opinion, really intriguing matchup. So um, I'd have to go back and look through the whole year, but this is definitely on the short list for card of the year, especially from a pre-event expectation. So we have a lot of great fights to talk about. It's an exciting one. Jerry, we can swing it over to you first. What do you make of this UFC 322 card as a whole?
I mean, you've already kind of knocked it on the head for the main card, especially. It's insane. All fights that have very, very big implications. All ones we're really excited about. And we were talking a bit before we started the show. The rest of the card is just as entertaining and just as good. I don't think there's going to be a single boring fight on there. I'm hoping it's not one of those cards that we get all hyped up about and then we get decision after decision after decision. But with all the people fighting on, I highly doubt we'll see that. And if we do, it'll be a very entertaining decision.
Yeah, I think you get lucky sometimes in November towards the end of the year when they're trying to fit everyone, get their last fights in. I think this is one of these. Also, two title fights, can never hate on that. Yeah, and then I think it should, like Jerry was saying, it should deliver. We got the good names. We just need no eye pokes or non-contests or anything, and then we should be good.
Yeah. We will start off at the main event. We have Islam Makhachev moving up to 170 pounds. He broke the record for title defenses at 155. He's moving up, going for 2-division championship status. Not double champ. A lot of people get the terms confused. 2-division champion. Taking on the new champion, JDM, who currently has 0 title defenses, and he's looking to get the first one on his record against Islam Makhachev. It would be a great way to start defending the belt, is adding a defense against Islam Makhachev. And we'll start it with the betting odds as well, so I don't forget, because I tend to do that on these previews. But for the betting odds, we have Della Maddalena as a pretty sizable underdog, plus 215. Favorite Islam Makhachev minus 290. Anthony, we can swing it over to you first. What are you looking at for this main event in between Islam Makhachev and Della Maddalena?
This is definitely a pretty crazy fight. I would say too, it is one of the biggest fights. Obviously, anytime you have a champion going up, but Islam's very decorated. But this is also just a bit interesting to me because I still was never in love with Islam's defense streak at lightweight with some of the opponents he was facing. And I thought JDM, I wasn't like sold on his title path before he got to Belal. And then obviously he looked amazing in that fight and took the belt. So I think this is like, obviously for Islam, this is a huge legacy fight too, just to be a 2-division champion. But for both, like, for anyone that wasn't fully sold on JDM, and then after the great performance he put on Belal, I mean, he has a chance here to beat one of the most decorated fighters fighting right now, someone with a huge, massive fan base too. So that's a big opportunity for him. And then for the doubters of Islam, going up, which is arguably probably the hardest, 2 weight divisions with the sizable gap, probably one of the hardest divisions to make that leap if Islam were to win this and become a double champ right there, and maybe even stay. Who knows? I think he was kind of alluding he doesn't want to really cut weight again or go back down, or that's all he said. Like, if he were to fight like Topuria, the UFC would have to pay him a lot of money to make the weight cut again. So if Islam were to win, crazy to be a 2-division and against someone like JDM, but then who knows what he can do from there too in this division.
Yeah, and I think stylistically that's going to be a big question as well, because we know JDM is more of a boxer. Islam naturally is his wrestling background, and I'm curious to see how this goes, because Islam looked massive in the pictures I've seen leading up to the fight this weekend, and he just looks like he's built for 170. It's going to be very interesting to see, because I'm with you as well, Anthony. Islam's defenses at lightweight didn't really intrigue me all that much. I feel like there's guys who he's missing on there who I would have loved to see him fight. Obviously, Topuria, Gaethje, those would have been some of the big names that I feel like he left hanging. But this is one of the ones that we've talked about it on here before of, oh yeah, I don't love everyone trying to be a double champ after so few defenses, but Islam did set the record for most title defenses at lightweight, and I think he rightfully so earned a shot at Jack Della Maddalena, who it's going to be interesting. I think both of these guys have a very, very possible chance of winning. It just kind of depends on what ends up going down, who's able to control the fight, control the tempo. But it's one that I'm just excited for.
Yeah, and I hold similar. We've talked about this before as well on other episodes, but I hold similar opinions on the Islam Makhachev 155-pound title reign. And there are people out there who think he's the best to ever fight in the weight class, and I still will not give that or take that from Khabib yet, especially when you're looking at the Islam run. Really close fight with Dustin Poirier until he landed the submission, and like that's a good win, and there's nothing wrong with what he did. But when you're talking about things like greatest of all time, the way that you win really matters, and you can look at what Dustin did what Khabib did to Dustin at a much, much better point of Dustin's career versus what Islam did on kind of Dustin's back nine of his career. I don't put much stock in a Hanato Moicano title defense as well. Like some of the things that Islam did, and they're really not even all his fault. It's not his fault that he had to fight Moicano and not Arman Sarukian. You know, we're having a different discussion if he has a title defense over Arman Sarukian. You know, Charles had to pull out, and then he got a short notice Volkanovski in one of his title defenses. And I don't really hold much stock in the Volkanovski, you know, short notice fight. But that being said, I do think that his wins over Charles to get the belt and the first defense against Volkanovski, I do think those are both good wins. So it's not like he has no good wins. They're just a couple years in the rearview mirror at this point. It's been a while since he's really logged a win that I look at and hold in high regard. But he does have the opportunity to do that in this fight against JDM, because moving up, beating JDM after the way JDM looked against Bilal, I think would be really, really impressive. And then obviously we've talked about this already, but Islam moving up to 170. What do you guys make of that change? Do you think he will fit in at the 170-pound weight class? What are you making of Islam's size moving up a weight class? Jerry, you can lead off on this one.
I mean, I kind of mentioned the size thing, and he does look naturally comfortable at 170. I want to know what he was really weighing in at lightweight when it was fight night. Once he'd rehydrated and everything, I want to know what he was walking around at. But he looks very comfortable at 170. He just looks wide and just big comparatively. And I don't think there's going to be much of a height difference. I think it's about 1 inch difference in them. I am curious to see how he does with the reach of Jack Della Maddalena, because Jack's reach is a little longer than Islam, and that's something that Islam's usually been the bigger guy at lightweight. He's usually been the more physical guy, the stronger guy. And now going up, I don't know if it's going to be the same. We did see that with Alex Pereira, and his power transitioned extremely well. But it's one that I just don't know what Islam's really going to look like. I see the potential there. I just think he's might be more successful at lightweight than he will be at welterweight. At the end of the day, though, it is Islam Makhachev, and he is so well-rounded in everything that maybe he can cause some issues. Going to be curious how Jack Della Maddalena's takedown defense looks, because he hasn't really, outside of that Bilal fight, he hasn't really fought a true wrestler, to say. I know he fought Gilbert Burns, but Burns was kind of at the back end of his career, so it's not quite the same there. But
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too about the weight. I'm sure Islam was weight bullying like every, good UFC fighter does nowadays, it seems like. But the biggest thing too with the weight jumping up is I would be curious to see just how the chin holds up too. Just anytime you're going up to a weight class where they weigh, that much more and they have the difference in power. And curious to see, like you were saying, Pereira's power translated. It's not like Islam's, the hardest hitter in general. He does have, some nice striking. Give or take, he does maybe do some damage on ground and pound. But too, I wonder how with JDM for the maybe the few shots that Islam does land clean, how easy JDM, if he is able to just kind of shrug them off, being like, oh, I've been fighting dudes way heavier than you. Some of them probably more known as power punchers, and so, or not concerned, but I'm interested to see if the power bothers him at all. But that too, kind of like Jerry, like you're going into, I think Islam has probably had a lot of success too in the wrestling department. Not only is he a phenomenal, obviously, wrestler, but I'm sure the weight advantage helps. So I'm curious to see how he would do against maybe some of these bigger opponents. If he can, obviously the technique's always going to be there, but sometimes when it comes to straight manhandling or getting an advantage from the strength department, that could be a little bit tougher in this new weight class.
Yeah, and I think that Islam will be filled out, and he will be a guy who looks like a welterweight when he's in there. I don't think that will be a problem for Islam. But what I find interesting is when you look at the guys that he was fighting at 155 pounds, they're all guys who had made 145 pounds at one point in the career. Moicano was a 45 pounder. Poirier was a 45 pounder. Charles was. Volkanovski actively is. And then even if you look at his title run, he had Dan Hooker on there who had fought at 145 pounds. And Bobby Green, I don't think he ever fought at 145 pounds, but I mean, he probably could. He's pretty small for the lightweight division. So, really not a ton of guys, at least in his recent run, that are, you know, big and physical like a JDM. They're all solid sized lightweights, but they're all guys who at one point in time were able to make that 145-pound limit, even if it was earlier in their career, but they were smaller guys who grew into lightweight. It's not like he was fighting, once again, a guy like Arman Sarukian, who is big for that lightweight division. He wasn't really fighting guys who are on the larger side of lightweight. He tended to fight guys who were kind of your more natural lightweight and even a little bit on the lighter side for the weight class. So I find that really interesting to see how he translates going up a weight. I'm sure he'll look fine, but I'm interested to see how some aspects of his game look against a bigger opponent. Obviously, grappling size is massive, but like, what's it look like when he gets in top position? Because like at lightweight, when he got in top position, he looked tremendous. Does he still have that ability to control from top position at welterweight? I think that's going to be probably one of the deciding factors of the fight is what he's able to do once he gets the fight down. And I think that's where we could really find out if he's as filled out as he could be for the welterweight division.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said earlier as well, the step up for these featherweight guys going to lightweight's only 10 pounds. This is a much bigger jump, and it's a much more significant jump. So that's something else that I have in the back of my mind.
I saw too. That's why I hate to do like it's not quite MMA math, but also saw uh not only to the some of the people he's been fighting, the featherweight points, but then like 4 out of his last 5 wins are all like late replacements too. So people haven't had a real full camp in a while against them. And the one that did was Volk, who in the first fight, who obviously I thought that was a really good fight. There's also the thing if the fights are in Abu Dhabi, I know we've jokingly talked about a couple times whether it's a good or bad performance. So I think JDM really put on a clinic of how to execute a good game plan too in his last one against Bilal. And I think him having a full training camp and everything, I would trust him likely to be able to at least what his game plan is to execute it. Maybe it doesn't work out fully in this one, but I think too that that's also going to be maybe I don't want to say it it's a benefit for JDM because every fighter ideally should have a full training camp, but it's maybe something interesting enough Islam hasn't had to go against from his opponents. But I did already see too. JDM was working with some Craig Jones too, so I like that. I like that to nullify the Dagestani wrestling.
Yeah, and the Craig Jones point is actually one I was going to bring up as well. So, when you look at the guy who's given Makhachev the toughest test in the grappling realm, at least in recent memory, would be Volkanovski, which was a shocker at the time. How good he was able to do defending in the wrestling exchanges in that first fight. Um, and he had Craig Jones to, he went to Craig and was like, all right, man, we've got the Russian Dagestani grappler. Like, what do we need to do here? And Craig Jones was the mastermind behind that grappling game plan. And the real negative points for Volkanovski in the grappling phases weren't Craig Jones's fault. Like, Volkanovski was taunting Makhachev and got his back taken at one point. Like, that's not Craig Jones. That Volkanovski, decided to do that, and it's not like Volkanovski to do, but that is what happened, and I don't exactly chalk that up to the coach not having the right game plan there. So I find it really interesting that we have a situation where JDM, in my opinion, you can look back at some real older fights and really be discouraged by some of the things you've seen grappling wise. Basil Hafez fight, there's some terrible tape in there. Other guys had him in some bad chokes. I think there was a Russian guy earlier in his career. I think it was Ramazan Ameev, maybe. And I think on Contender Series, he was in a deep choke as well. And those things were big concerns. But you can see two trends, which both involve Craig Jones, of Jack Della Maddalena getting making massive improvements fight to fight in the grappling phases. Just looking at what he looked like against Burns and then going to Bilal Muhammad, what he looked like in between those two fights, I think are both great, or is a great example of those improvements. And then you can also look at, Volkanovski doing far exceeding expectations in the grappling phases against Makhachev. Both of those things involve Craig Jones. And now JDM has had months since his last fight to work with Craig Jones, knowing that this is going to be the guy that he's fighting. I find that to be a really interesting aspect and something that massively helps JDM if he were to pull this off.
Yeah, I think along the lines of that is we all know how close a lot of these guys from the same areas and countries are. And having Volkanovski as a fellow Australian for JDM, and I'm sure they've chatted about it. I think they've trained together a bit, as probably with Craig Jones. It's like he's been there, he's done that, he's fought Islam. Maybe he knows some holes that he wasn't able to exploit, but he looks back and sees them there. Something else to think about. And then my big question for JDM is we know Islam's going to take him down at some point. And he did a great job in the Bilal fight. He only got taken down 3 times out of, I think, 9 or 10 attempts, but he got back up pretty quickly every single time. And if he starts doing that and Islam can get him down but not keep him down, that's a huge motivation boost and, I guess, morale boost for JDM. And then he can make it more of a boxing fight, which we know he's already. If this was strictly standing up at the moment, I would take Jack Della Maddalena pretty significantly, I think.
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning. It's always funny some of the times where, especially when someone's coming up and they're the favorite over the existing champion, but it happens from time to time. I do think Islam is one of the best fighters in the world right now, certainly, and has his case for the entirety of the UFC history. But I am tempted to kind of side with JDM. Just for, I think it's a huge jump in weight, just between those specific classes. I do think JDM will have a little bit of the physical, the reach advantage and such like that. And I think he could. I'm going to trust in the takedown defense enough, or at least in the ability, like Jerry was saying, to get up. I think is the most important thing, to not give up whole rounds with ground control or that, and to be able to avoid significant ground and pound and maybe avoid a submission, but stay up keep it on the feet for the most part, and then I trust the boxing from him in that perspective to probably get the job done. So
Yeah, and when I look at JDM here, um, in the specific things in the grappling, I think his takedown defense is good. But to me, one of the hallmarks for JDM is that he's not a guy with iron. This isn't Jose Aldo. He's not gonna go out there and stop 20 for 20 or 10 for 10 or whatever. He'll give up a couple, but at the end of the day, if you're giving up 2 or 3 on 10 shots or 4 on 15 shots, like that's fine. And then it does come down to getting up. And I think one of the things that I love about JDM is he's a risk taker when it comes to getting up. Like, he is not just going to sit around and try and have the perfect get up. Like, he takes risks to get up. And in this fight, that's either going to win him the fight or it's going to lose him the fight. It's a situation where he's going to try to get up. He's going to try and explode. He's going to try and put himself in the position to get back to his feet where he can strike. He's not going to lay there on his back for a round and just go, oh, well, I didn't get finished. He's not going to do that. He's going to try and get up, which I think is the proper way to approach this type of matchup. But what that does open yourself up to is a guy in Islam Makhachev who has an elite front choke series. We've seen him finish 2 title fights with that darce that he's got. So I think it's going to come down to when JDM is getting up and when he's being aggressive and when he's taking risks. Does he let Islam work to a better position, or does he leave his neck out for Islam to grab it and threaten a submission? So I think that's going to be the deciding factor in this fight. And I also do think that for as long as this fight is standing, I think it's going to be JDM pretty one-sided. I think he's far better striking wise. I think he uses range at a great level, and I think he has the interior boxing to really punish Islam. Like, Poirier landed some. Poirier is a great boxer, but Poirier is a old lightweight. JDM is a in his prime welterweight who's I don't know about you guys, but if I were to rank the best boxers in the UFC, JDM is going to be a name that I say pretty quickly. He's not number 1, but he might be number 2. And I just think that, when it comes down to some of these exchanges, I think he's going to do damage and continue to do damage and just touch and land and touch. And I think that's going to build up over the course of 5 rounds. And he'll also touch to the body as well. I think he's going to do a lot of good work on the feet. And as long as he can, avoid some of those submissions while he's trying to work back to his feet, I think he wins this one. So I originally was going to pick Islam, but the more I looked at this fight, I kind of decided that I'm going to go upset and take JDM. I don't know if he gets the finish here, but I think he'll have more damage at the end of 5 rounds. So I'll take him to win a decision.
I mean, it's one that he also throws at a lot higher of a rate than a lot of the guys Islam's seen in recent years. So that's something else that I'm thinking of and kind of like, yeah, I was the same way as you, James. I was really kind of picking Islam coming into this, and now it's like, I see more ways or more issues on the Islam side than I do with Jack Della Maddalena. Does it mean by the time the preview comes out this week and the fights actually start, am I going to still be thinking the same way? But it's going to be a very, very close and entertaining fight.
Yeah, just real quick, the last thing too is that's what was in my head too, James, was like I watched Poirier kind of touch up Islam a little bit. And I think you put it perfectly. That was an old, past once was a featherweight lightweight versus an in your prime welterweight. So I just think if JDM can get his hands on Islam like Poirier did, I think there would be a significant more damage happening in those. But the last question I was going to ask, because I thought he looked good in the Beneil fight, I'd have to remember. Like, I remember the Basil Hafiz fight, but that was, I know, a lot of jumping gilly and then ending up just on the bottom. And I thought he looked like he definitely gassed, but I'm curious too if this does, maybe he can't find the finish and this does have to go 5 rounds. And I would say Islam's wrestling is working a little bit more than Bilal's did in that fight. What do you guys think about JDM's cardio through 5 though? Do you have any worries at all, or do you think is that a disadvantage, or do you think he'll be fine?
In my opinion, I think that I'm kind of not taking cardio into consideration when I make a pick, and I kind of am doing that because I think that both fighters could get tired just based on how the other guy performs. So I think if Islam is getting his wrestling going, I wouldn't be surprised if Jack is having to get up a bunch and he gets tired. But at the same time, if it's a more ideal game plan for Jack, I could see Islam getting tired from getting hit a little bit too much, from having to grapple a little bit too much, not finding success enough, and getting hit to the body. So I could see both guys having serious cardio problems, but I think it would be a result of the other guy's success, if that makes sense. So I'm just trying when I pick the fight, I'll think more about which fighter I think has that success.
Yeah, I don't think in this one, with both guys actually having a full fight camp and it being a long time since, or at least for Jack's side of things, I guess Islam as well, it's been a long time since they've fought, that I don't think it'll be too much of an issue. But it is one that I think Jack's gas tank might be a little better because he's been at 170. He's done 5 rounds at 170. Islam's still bringing in that extra weight that, unlike what he usually does or did at lightweight. So I'm wondering if that'll take any sort of toll on him.
Yeah, and I think the weight cut and not having it is tough too, because with chin and cardio, you can kind of speak on both out of both sides of your mouth when you're talking about a guy moving up. Because for both, you can be like, "Oh, he's getting hit by harder guys," and then you can also say, "Well, he's not dehydrated, to the same extent, so he should be able to eat a shot better." And it's like, well, this guy's carrying more weight. You might gas out earlier, but it's also like, well, he's not extremely dehydrated, so he'll be actually healthier while he's in there, so his cardio will be better. It's always tough predicting those two. Attributes for a fighter who's switching weight classes, because you really can talk yourself into believing either or until you see it in action.
Well, I do remember Islam had just said he's only been fighting at 70% of his best because of the weight cuts. And like I heard that and I was like, dude, get out of here. And then second thought, I was like, God, that hope he's not true, because that would actually be really scary though if he was only at like 70% of his best.
Well, he's only at 100% when he gets to use the IV. So
yeah, there you go.
Also, Islam Makhachev on creatine for the first time in his career.
I saw that.
Yeah. I think they might be taking something else and calling it creatine, but that's a whole nother discussion.
It's a clear bottle, and that's like written in English somehow. It says creatine.
Yeah. All right. Let's move down to the co-main event. Also, a fighter going for 2 division championship status. This time it is Weili Zhang moving up to flyweight from strawweight to take on Valentina Shevchenko. We have arguably the best women's strawweight of all time versus arguably, well, not arguably, the best women's flyweight of all time. It's really hard to find someone else you can make the claim for against Valentina. At strawweight, Joanna was great. Rose has a couple wins over Weili, so it's a little bit more of a discussion. But needless to say, these are 2 of the best women's fighters to ever compete. One's moving up. This is about as big of a fight as it's going to get for this weight class, and there's going to be serious legacy implications on the line, because for either of these fighters, when you're trying to, think about the best women's fighters of all time, one win over the other fighter is like a resume defining victory when you look back at your career in hindsight. So this one is going to be massive. Jerry, I think it's your turn to lead us off here. What do you make of the women's flyweight title fight between Weili Zhang and Valentina Shevchenko?
Well, we've talked a bit already with Della, Maddalena, and Islam coming up for a second title or a second division title. I think there's no one in the UFC right now that is more deserving of getting that opportunity to move up and go for a second division than Zhang Weili. It's just she's pretty much wiped out everybody that there is to fight top that women's strawweight division, and done it with very relative ease as well. I know it's kind of some decisions, but she was just dominant in the wins, most recently over Tatiana Suarez and Yan Xiaonan. But it's just one that I still question how quick is Valentina going to be, because that's been something we've talked about in her previous fights. She's looked slower and slower, did kind of look a little rejuvenated in the Manon Fior fight, but that's a different style of fighting as well compared to what Zhang Weili is going to be bringing in, because she's so well rounded and she can wrestle, she can strike, and it's going to be a very intriguing fight to say the least.
Yeah, I know. Definitely been against Shevchenko and recently, but that's like you were mentioning the speed, and I will give it to her. I do think she looked better in the Mignon Fior fight, especially if you're taking into account like Grasso the last couple of fights. But do you think that was one where what Fior broke her nose like in like the first minute or two, and I still thought that was like a 2-2 heading into the fifth, I believe, like close split decision. So going against someone like Zhang, who's also like you're saying, Jerry, it looked like a world beater recently against these. As soon as she kind of got past the Rose and Joanna a little, and shown that she was like kind of really the new generation and that she was taking over, I think she's been dominant in her own way, getting it done in different ways with striking. Sometimes, a lot of times, she's also been the one controlling on the ground against. I think it was the Janan fight. Also, probably getting submission in that fight that was not counted, but besides that, so I do think this genuinely though is a really fun one, in the fact that you do never maybe get two people that have been at the top of their divisions for so long, and maybe it's a bit more volatile, and there's people getting upset when it's the men's MMA, those divisions, so you never truly get this like Goliath versus Goliath matchup. But it is nice in some divisions that have been struggling a little bit, at least the two people at the top that have been phenomenal for so long, we are truly getting it. Even though Shevchenko definitely is a little older, it's still, I think you always have to be happy when you get the chance to see it.
Yeah. On the Yan Xiaonan fight, real quickly, because I do find this interesting. The UFC had to cut a fighter for potential betting issues, and then there was an apparent investigation that started, and then, not saying this is connected to anything, but Jason Herzog just didn't ref any fights last week. Just interesting notes. Maybe he took a week off for personal reasons, but I just find it interesting there was no Herzog. Not saying that positively or negatively. I just usually see a Herzog working the UFC fights. 0 fights for Herzog over the weekend. Just haven't seen many people say that, but I do find it quite interesting. So something I'll keep a personal tab on to see if we see Jason Herzog at all this weekend. So
they must have got my my message. I sent the UFC a $300 Venmo request, and I said, put the Weili Yan Jianan fight.
Yeah, that one is one of the most egregious things, and I'm pretty sure we talked about that one that happened as well. But that should have been a first round submission for Weili. Back to this fight, I think Valentina's at a really interesting point in her career, because I was really low on Valentina. I kind of thought she was declining before the Grasso trilogy, but like the fact that you're going 1-1-1 with Alexa Grasso, I think is really, really horrible. Just to be frank. And Natalia Silva got one crack at Grasso and gave her a tour of the octagon, and like it wasn't even a close fight. What would Weili do if she, had to fight Grasso 3 times? Like, Grasso might knock Weili might go 1-1 with 1 knockout victory, 1 submission victory, and 1 decision victory. Like she might do that if she fought Grasso 3 times. And then when Valentina did have more success, some of the most success we've seen from Valentina in an extended period was, a Manon Fior fight where Manon did break her nose early, and I think that massively affected the rest of the fight. Manon still won 2 rounds, and, yes, Valentina landed the shot that broke the nose, but like, how often are we going to see, if we run that fight 100 times, how often do we see that fight where, Valentina breaks her nose in the first round and then manages to barely scrape by with a decision win? I just don't think it's a very repeatable outcome. But the thing about Manon Fior is she is bigger. She is much more physical. And for Valentina, I think she has a better time overcoming that big physical difference, especially in a fight that had a lot of cage control, a lot of cage pushing, because it's much easier for her to use her timing. She did a great job with her timing and fight IQ in that fight to kind of overcome some of the physical issues. Those things I think are going to be much harder to accomplish against, someone who's still physical in Weili, very, very physical, but she's going to be smaller and lighter and quicker, much quicker than Manon Fior. So I think this is, she looked better against Manon, but I think she's got a much different challenge on her hands here in comparison to that Manon fight. And before we swing it back over, forgot about the betting odds like I knew I would. Currently plus 100 on the Zhang Weili side, and Valentina Shevchenko is minus 128.
I mean, I think that's pretty fair betting odds. I think I'll enjoy Weili being an underdog, to say the least. And I also was just looking at it, and I forgot Tatiana Suarez, one of Weili's most recent, or her last fight, she was a flyweight briefly as well. So she's been up and fought, or she hasn't moved up a division, but she's fought people who have been on the bigger side compared to her. So I don't think there's going to be a huge size difference or advantage for Valentina Shevchenko coming into this, which earlier on in her MMA or in her UFC career, Shevchenko did seem like the bigger fighter a lot of the times until, I guess, Fior.
I do think too, just with this fight too, I think one of the issues this issue persists across all MMA, but of people being one-sided, definitely striker versus wrestler or whatever. I think MMA, women's MMA, it's the lack of balance though. Like obviously, it's a lack of total complete top skill too when it comes to whether that be certain transitions or clinch striking can be all you'll see, or they're still doing the judo throws that they end up on the bottom like every time when they go to do that. But I do think too, this is a fun one because normally when it comes to Zhang, every fight we break her down, it's like, oh, she's a great striker, she can do this, but she can also win with this wrestling and stuff like that. And then on the flip side, Valentina, the things that made her she's so quick. She has amazing kicks too, as well as good striking. She can also wrestle, though, or we've seen her stop takedowns and win fights with control time, too. So I do just generally, too, even trying to think, like, I would think I want Zhang to strike more in this one. I think I would trust that. But we have seen her win fights recently with the wrestling. Now, will that wrestling hold up against Valentina, a weight class above? We've seen Valentina herself have some success, in both departments. So I do truly, too, as well, just think, and they're elite for a reason, but this is a fun matchup between two well-balanced people that we've seen win fights with, both. We've seen win fights in the striking department or, through the ground game and stuff. And I would be really curious for this one to see which one plays out.
Yeah, and I find that interesting because I feel like a lot of what I've seen, and maybe this just might be me reading too much into what people are saying online, but I think a lot of people that are high on Valentina this weekend think there's a good path to offensive wrestling success. And like, I just can't be so confident that that's going to be the case. Like, yeah, maybe she will. And like, I think Weili's probably better at defending takedowns and getting back to her feet. So maybe Valentina can string together some offensive wrestling success here. But like, so can Weili, I think. Weili, had some moments against Tatiana offensively, and she's had plenty of offensive moments before. She submitted Carla, submitted Yan Xiaonan. Like, she's done plenty from an offensive perspective on the ground before. And, like, Valentina had some offensive success against Manon Fior, had some offensive success against against Alexa Grasso from a wrestling perspective, but like, Grasso might be the worst defensive wrestler in the sport. Like, she looked horrid in the third fight from a defensive grappling perspective. She looked regressed from her first two horrible performances in defensive grappling. And then if you go back further than that, she was the one on the wrong side of the grappling against Tyler Santos. So like, Jennifer Maia, I believe, won a round off her with offensive grappling. So, like, I think Valentina is there to be offensively grappled as well. And I would probably go as far to say both of these fighters are much better offensive wrestlers than they are defensive wrestlers. So, like, it wouldn't, I guess I don't think it's impossible that Valentina has offensive wrestling success, but, like, if you were to tell me Weili was to land takedowns here, I would not be surprised in the slightest.
No, I think that's a very reasonable path to victory as well for Weili. Is we know her stand-up's great, but there's a reason she has, what was it, 8 submissions, and should have 9 submissions, I guess, technically, but it's one that she can do it all. And that's why I'm taking her in this fight. Is I just trust her, and she seems more in her prime as well compared to Valentina, who we've talked a bunch already about her. She's slowed down. She's looked rough in her recent fights. Weili just looks quicker and stronger and better recently.
Yeah, that is true. Because I was thinking with the wrestling too. I get Zhang's been been beat before with wrestling, and I was thinking I remember Rose really won some of those rounds with wrestling. She looked. There was 2 takedowns in that fight, so she really only got taken down twice. She really struggled to get up, from what I remember. Or I was gonna say I remember Shen, and I think Glenn was one of those later rounds, kind of won a round 2 with some wrestling and ground control. But yeah, I to think if they relay the chatter is online that Shevchenko, unless I could be wrong too, but yeah, unless they think the real key to victory is going to be through the ground, I think that is a tougher task. But that is also why I lean Zhang. I like her chances on the feet better too. Not to say she can't mix them together with some of the wrestling or get Shevchenko thinking about shots or get her tired, but I do see the path to success too on the feet, even though that might sound bad, because obviously Shevchenko's good in her own right on the feet. But besides that, I do just think I thought that was a great point too, Jerry, and that's still kind of why I feel like I'm going against Shevchenko again. But I think I am going to take Zhang because she is more in her prime, and I also do think she's just as elite, if not better, of Shevchenko. I'm just going with I think the younger age, or the younger age, the less fight miles, and in their prime for me is going to take precedence over the jump in the weight.
Yeah. I agree with a lot of what you guys said, and I'll be on Weili as well. And I just think there's been too much physical regression for Valentina. I don't think she's nearly as fast, and I think this will be a fight where that gets exposed worse. It was exposed pretty bad in the Grasso trilogy, but she's got a win since then, and that wasn't as big of a concern in that specific matchup. So I think that has really made people forget about that speed drop off. And on top of that, I don't think her durability is as good as it used to be as well. There were a lot of moments in that Grasso trilogy where Grasso was landing punches that hurt Valentina, whether that be to the head or to the body. And if you're getting hurt by Grasso, you can be hurt by Weili. And that's not to say Grasso doesn't hit hard, because she does, but Weili hits hard for sure. That I have no doubt in. So I think if you're just at a point in your career where your speed is declining and your durability is suspect, I have a hard time picking you against Weili, especially, when you're looking at the reasons that Valentina was grappling in some of those Grasso moments. It's because she had gotten touched to a point that she didn't want to get touched. She had been hit a little too hard. Grasso made her fly backwards. I think it was the first or second fight. Those are big concerns for me when you're signing up to fight Weili. And very underrated. Valentina will do dumb shit as well. She just hasn't done dumb shit in a couple fights. So she gave up a world championship because she had a crappy little spinning elbow or spinning back fist attempt, and Grasso snatched it up and choked her out. And then she also gave away the second fight because she tried to do one of those stupid head and arm throws, ended up not getting it, ended up on bottom, and lost a round in what ended up being a draw. Around that, she was winning. So Grasso Valentina will do dumb shit as well. So I think that is a concern. And Weili isn't necessarily the, smartest of the bunch, but when she does dumb things, I think it comes out of aggression. When Valentina does dumb things, it's like, what are you doing? That was crazy. Why did you do that? That was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. So I'll be on Weili here, and maybe I'm just blindly hating Valentina, and maybe I'll be wrong, but I just think a lot of the things that Valentina does well at this stage of her career are just not going to be very applicable for a fight against Weili. So I'm on Weili as well, probably by finish.
Yeah, I could see a finish for sure in this one. And it's just the IQ. She's a lot smarter of a fighter. So.
Yeah. All right. Moving down the card, we have Sean Brady taking on Michael Morales. This is a great fight for two, highly ranked guys. Sean Brady, I think, is 18-1 in MMA with his only loss coming against Bilal Muhammad. Morales undefeated in MMA. I believe he's 16-0 with a 6-0 UFC record.
I was say he's 18-0, so they're
18-0.
both right there.
Yeah. So, I mean, two guys who have just simply been, very hard to beat, you can say. I'm pumped for this one. I think this is a great fight. The betting odds, I think, are the co-main event was the closest betting odds, but this one would have the next closest with Sean Brady as a minus 148 favorite and Michael Morales as a plus 116 underdog. So pretty closely lined there. Anthony, you can lead us off on this one. What do you make of Michael Morales versus Sean Brady?
Like you said, I think it's a fantastic fight. Michael Morales is one of my newer favorite fighters that I just enjoy watching. I know he's still on the younger side, hasn't fought quite as much. But Sean Brady I think that's an unfortunate matchup because I do think Sean Brady possibly could be the next champion. I think the way he's just been mauling people, and I think he was underrated, not getting as much shine. I know he lost that tough one to Bilal, which kind of set him back, and then Bilal, future title, got on that right title path to get to win that fight. But Sean Brady's been getting some recognition with his last two wins, so I just this matchup scares me as someone that liked Morales and wanted to root for him, because I do think Sean Brady is a monster. But we'll see what wins out. I know Morales actually has a really good takedown defense, statistically speaking, across his UFC career so far. But he definitely hasn't had to fight anyone like Sean Brady yet. So we'll see which style wins out in this one.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at who they fought recently, that kind of makes me more curious about how good both of these guys. Obviously, they are two of the top in the world at welterweight, but when you're fighting an aging, I mean, since Sean Brady lost, he beat Kelvin Gastelum. We're getting old. Gilbert Burns, well past his prime, and then Leon Edwards is probably past his prime as well.
We'll talk plenty about Leon.
Yes, we will. Yeah, so I'm not getting too much into that. Meanwhile, Michael Morales' last two wins were Gilbert Burns, more recently than Sean Brady beat him, and then Neil Magny. So it's one that I'm not putting a lot of stock into what these guys have done recently, just because of it is like that aging group of – it's the new generations coming in pretty much, out with the old, in with the new. But that makes this a very interesting fight because I don't really know what we're going to see.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued by this matchup, and I already had the preview written for this one, and one of the things I wrote in the preview was these are just not two guys that I'm too interested in picking against at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like I gladly would pick both of these guys to win fights and do great things, but it's like we put them both up against each other, and now it's like, oh crap, man, come on. So it's a really tough one to call, but and when you look at what these guys do well, they both do polar opposite things well, and they're both like freaks for the weight class, but also both in polar opposite ways. Morales is a great distance striker who's like super tall and long for the weight class, and he's one of the best athletes in my opinion in the UFC and definitely in the weight class. But like he's super athletic. You look at Sean Brady, wouldn't necessarily call him a super athlete, but like the guy is ginormous, and he's short for the weight class, but like the guy's back is just ginormous. He's huge, and what does he do well? He's a tremendous offensive wrestler and a world-class jiu-jitsu practitioner for MMA. Two polar opposite styles, but two guys who respect a lot of their games. Just period. They both have a ton of skills that I love.
Yeah, when Sean Brady does land as well, he throws with serious power.
That's what too. Well, at first I just wanted to say real quick because that Morales, like I wanted to see him because, like Jerry, you're saying, I don't want to hang my hat on him, like hyping him up after a Burns and Magny win. But it's like you gave him the one dude I didn't want to see though, but which will lead to a extremely fun fight. I just wanted to point out because that Burns fight didn't really sell me on it. It was like a quick, I think, minute or two knockout in the first round. Give or take. I mean, he did stuff one takedown and he caught him, but I was gonna say that Burns fight didn't do much. Forgot Brady just beat him like the fight before. And then I looked back. They also gave Burns JDM and Bilal before that. So that's about the worst 4 fights you could get aging in a division.
Yeah.
But it's like truly fed to the wolves. But yeah, I am curious because like I would think you'd have to for the people that took, and I think I might have ended up taking Leon, or I did maybe think Sean Brady, just the wrestling after what Bilal did to Leon. Maybe I did end up taking Brady, but I'd have to think if you liked Leon's chances against Sean Brady, you would still have to like Morales for the distance striking and management. You just also be getting a plus in more athleticism, younger, and I don't know if I can say better takedown defense at this point because of who he's fought so far, and obviously Leon's fought for so long. But at least you know you're getting a little bit more athleticism, maybe some strength and power to physically defend takedowns. Maybe not technique wise or anything, but I would like to think you get the same striking upside with a little bit more safer of a blanket on coming back on it for the takedown defense.
Yeah, I mean, Sean Brady actually has a full fight camp this time because he took that Leon fight on short notice because it was meant to be Jack Della Maddalena and Leon Edwards fighting in London. I believe it was in London, but yeah, then Sean Brady came in instead and looked damn good on a week's notice or so.
Yeah. And another thing that I think when you're comparing, and I'll have plenty to say about Leon in a second, but when you're comparing what Morales does to Leon, the things that you are watching on TV when you're watching Leon fight and the things you're screaming at your TV going, Leon, do this, Leon, throw, Leon, try and punch the guy. It's a fight. Like, don't really have to, like, Morales can be a little inactive, but you're not screaming at the TV going, hey, man, fight back, please, please, fight, it's a fight. You know, with Leon, it's like, dude, you're just kind of standing there and doing nothing. This is crazy. So that concern is also gone when you're looking at Morales. So, for me, I could talk myself into picking both of these guys. And as far as the 5 main card fights go, this will probably be my least confident prediction. But I think this fight is going to be determined by how Sean Brady closes the distance. The majority of the way he closes the distance is punch, 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 punch. I'm inside, close distance, push you to the fence, take you down, start working from top position. I think that will be fine once he gets his hands on Morales. Like if he can consistently like corral Morales, get his hands on him and start working on his takedowns, I think he'll do just fine. But like that period of time for him to close the distance is just screaming for Morales to just completely take his head off. So I'm going to go with Sean Brady with the expectation that he can be patient and smart enough to get inside without taking that shot. But like, if we were to fast forward to next week and I was told, hey, Sean Brady got his light to put out, you know, trying to close the distance, it would not shock me at all. So like I said, this is my least confident pick and I'll take Brady, but it's not one that I'm, you know, too confident in.
Yeah, and you mentioned the athleticism, and that's something that as Sean Brady does come into the pocket and tries to get into that dirty boxing range, Morales could throw a knee, an elbow, and just next thing you know, his lights are cooked. But I'm also leaning the same way with Sean Brady, just because I think he will manage to get the takedown eventually, and I don't know if Morales will be able to get back up or survive.
Same way the third time. I was leaning. I mean, I probably will end up betting on Morales a little bit for a KO, just because I do like him stuff. And same thing like you're saying. I see it there. I just told myself I wouldn't bet against Brady again, especially against someone especially against like more of a striker matchup or someone I'm not fully confident in their takedown defense because I'm tired of betting for the knockout that never comes. the wrestling ground control, ground and pound always seems to be more likely in these striker versus wrestler matchups. So I'm not gonna switch. I'll probably end up taking, for sure, at least for the picks, a Sean Brady win.
Yeah, and from a brief nugget from a betting perspective, the method of victories here are kind of crazy. Like, it's the favorited outcomes are both guys to win by decision. And then you can get Morales KO at plus 370 and Sean Brady sub at plus 460. And I just think both of those two outcomes are very, very plausible. And like that, I'm not really, you know, breaking any news here that Sean Brady can submit someone or Michael Morales can knock somebody out. Everybody knows that. But like the way that the betting odds reflect that, I think is pretty insane. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well. All right. Moving on to another tremendous welterweight fight, Carlos Prates versus Leon Edwards. This one, while we're talking about betting, is lined with Prates as the favorite. He is currently minus 200, while Leon Edwards is plus 154. Leon Edwards, a former champion who is on a 2-fight slide. Carlos Prates is, that rising contender, 5-1 in the UFC, all 5 wins coming by knockout. And when he knocks people out, as Jeremy Stevens said, they don't move. They go down. Even when he got Charles Radke to the body, he got him bad enough to the body where he still was not moving. So this is a great matchup between two strikers. This might be the one that I'm most interested in on the card, just to see how it plays out. I love this fight as well. Jerry, it's your turn to lead us off here. And the Englishman, do you have any hope left for your boy in Leon Edwards?
I do have a little bit of hope left on him, only because he's actually getting a striker for a change. And that's something that I do. I'm not saying that I'm picking Leon by any means. I do think I'll probably bet on Leon at some point, but for actual picks go, I'll probably lean Prates. But it's because his 2 losses, Bilal Muhammad, wrestler, we've talked about that already, and then the guy we just finished talking about, Sean Brady, who's a get in close and then put you on the ground, and he did not do well against either of those guys. Now that he gets to fight a guy in Carlos Prates, more of a stand-up, more of a striker, I see a lot better of a fight for Leon, and not saying it's going to be a resurgence, but I have more hope for this fight than I did both Sean Brady and Bilal.
Yeah, I'm leaning the same way. Well, at least in the hope department, I do really truly think it is, just because it's a striking matchup, and I can't get out of my head what Ian Gary did to Prates in that. I think when he had to fight a striker that's also a little slick in his own right, give or take, I know Ian Gary used some wrestling at least throughout that fight to get him thinking or give him different looks, but Prates looked bad for 4 rounds of that fight. Like, didn't know what to do, couldn't land anything bad. And, you could just say that's the matchup. I still think Leon has enough slickness to maybe bring that out of him or look that good. I think, like James was saying earlier, Leon would have to throw, though, and give him looks to get Carlos thinking and confused, and then to land some of his own. But the same way Gary did. I mean, I've seen Leon go to, all 3 parts. He can go to the head, to the body, and to the legs. Obviously, as much as he already said the head kick bang a dead thing again, so Leon, maybe give that up until that happens again. But I do think the striking, like you said, is basically why I could maybe finally root for Leon, or like pick him, or you can convince me. But that's also getting to the point where I probably need to stop picking against Prates. I think that Ian Gary one was the layup, because the trajectory from Prates, and he hadn't been truly tested by someone who I think is the most elite, one of the most elite in this division. I think Leon is definitely over the cliff a little bit, and definitely on the come down. So I still think Prates could probably beat someone like Leon, and God forbid if Leon gets put to sleep bad, that would be something.
Yeah, I love a lot of the welterweights in this weight class, just from whether it be a skills perspective, or whether it be like a personality perspective. These guys are 2 fighters that I really enjoy watching. Really like both of them from, hearing him talk and things like that. And Prates has become one of my favorite fighters on the roster at this point, just from you got your budgets around, you're like, hey, get some eyes on this Carlos Prates guy, and so far it's been, aside from the Ian Gary fight, like he's the type of guy who makes people's fans of the sport, and that's something that I love. And but when I look at this fight as a guy who wants to see Carlos Prates fight for a title, because it'd be hilarious. Could you imagine Carlos Prates in there with like Islam Makhachev? And tell me that's not one of the funniest things we can see. But from like a realistic perspective, I agree with what you guys have said. Leon Edwards finally gets to fight a striker, and I wish it wasn't Prates. I wish it would have been someone else, but he's finally getting to fight a striker. And not only is he fighting a striker, and he's struggled against great grapplers, two of them, but he's fighting a guy who he has the grappling advantage this time. Like if you were to tell me one of these guys is going to have grappling advantage or go out there and have grappling success, who's it going to be? I'd say Leon without hesitation. He has done things offensively, even if he's not, the perfect defensive grappler. He went out there and took Usman down. He got to good positions against Usman. He got to a good position against Bilal at one point in that fight. The problem with Leon is that he kind of, when things aren't going Leon's way, it's kind of like, all right, well, I've resigned myself to losing a decision here, and that's just my outcome for this fight. He doesn't even really quit in there. He just quits trying to win and just kind of hangs around. And that's when you get really frustrated watching Leon. But in this one, and when that happens, it's always been grapplers who have brought that out of him. Now he can go grapple. If he gets to the clinch, he's the guy with the better takedowns. He's much more skilled in the grappling. He'll have much more likelihood of getting to top positions here. And you guys have both brought this up, but when you're looking at what Ian Gary did to Carlos Prates, he put out the game plan for beating Carlos Prates in a striking-based matchup. He put it on film, and Leon Edwards can do every single thing. There isn't a single thing that Ian Machado Gary did that in that fight that Leon cannot do. And on top of that, this is a 3-round fight instead of a 5-round fight. So it's going to be even easier to do because he doesn't have to worry about the extra 2 rounds of Carlos knocking his head off. And when you're looking at the one flaw from Carlos, it's like, well, when Carlos isn't, knocking somebody out, he's really not doing much of anything. Like, is he going out there and like pumping the jab and like winning a decision in this fight? Like, is he going to win a volume-based decision? No, I'd be shocked if that happened. He knocks guys out or he loses. So like, I love Carlos Prates, and he could win this fight by violent knockout. He's one of those guys, but like, I have a hard time saying that's the most probable outcome in this matchup. I think a Leon Edwards, responsible decision-based striking, using his technicality and using some grappling, I think is what's going to win this fight.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, and that's something I was going to bring up after, but you just mentioned it is a 3-round fight. This is the first time that Leon won't be fighting a 5-round fight. I guess technically his first fight with Bilal was meant to be 5 rounds, but an eye poke stopped that. So it hasn't been since 2019 that he's fought in a 3-round fight. And as you mentioned earlier, James, like you look at even the Usman fight, the second one, before that knockout, he just looked completely like he'd given up. And now he looked exhausted in the late rounds against Bilal and before the finish against Sean Brady. So if he comes out and can get stuff going, because usually he starts out pretty quick. And that's a huge thing in a 3-round fight. If you can win the first round, all you need is one more from the next 2. Easier said than done, but coming out quickly. And a guy against Prates who hasn't spent a lot of time going the distance. And the one time he did was that Machado Gary fight. And as you said, he lost that. So I don't dislike Leon's chances at all in this fight. It just comes down to, one, if Carlos Prates hits him, will he be able to survive?
Hey, also, you can't say Leon, you can't have the most confidence in his chin because I watched Nate Diaz stumble him. So that is a bit scary, but I think too, that's how I feel, James. I think you put it perfectly. Like, Ian Gary put the absolute like formula, out there for how to beat Prates, and Leon can do all those things, but can he do them still is my question. I obviously think that's why I'm tempted to go Leon, but after all these losses and everything, and with age, and you just haven't been getting the best from him as of recent, and so that makes it a little tougher, especially when you've seen Prates been putting people's lights out. But I do think too, if Leon's still good in the clinch and his trips are amazing. I think that's one of the ways how we got Usman in that fight. I would say be careful for the elbows though, and maybe some spinning elbows when you're getting in close. But I'm still a little undecided of who I'll finally go for. But I don't know. And Leon was another underdog, right? I've already picked so many underdogs, which is never really a great sign. But as is a good card though, with close fights, that's also maybe one of the reasons we don't get to do this too often. But it's either I'm going Leon for the hopeful of everything we've talked about, that he can kind of get back to his old self, or just probably trusting Prates to get it done and find the shot.
Yeah, I give a very pro outlook on Leon, but I will say, like, a lot of my concerns, like, I very clearly think that Prates can knock him out, and a lot of my concerns with Leon are like where he's at mentally. Like, kind of seems like he's got a good life and like he's doing well, and like, how much does he really care about this fighting thing? I don't know. Like, some of those things are the questions I have with Leon. Or like, when he's in there, does he just go like, man, I'm just gonna try and not get knocked out today, and just like actually lose that volume based decision because he's just jabbing and like getting out of the way and like trying to get out of the way of shots, but not really taking the risk to make a mistake. Like, so things like that are what really concern me with Leon. Meanwhile, Prates is the complete opposite. Like, he's party, smoke a, drink a, knockout day. Like, he's just like, those are the things he's going to try and do. And like, he might not be smart enough to go be a championship caliber fighter, but I know he's going to go out there and try and knock Leon out. And if the wrong two mindsets cross, this could be Leon, being out cold and looking up at the lights at Madison Square Garden. That is a very real possibility. And the mental aspect is something that is almost impossible to pick when you're looking at a fight of, does the guy want to be in there? What's he thinking in there? Two very hard things to know. And I think that is where the problems really arise for Leon. It's not really a punches and kicks and a game plan thing.
I did want to say too, a true old-fashioned degenerate. You don't see that too often. He's still on the cigarettes and alcohol. Cigarettes, beer, and alcohol. You gotta respect it.
Yeah, Carlos Prates is. And after that last one, he was like, "I'm determined to prove I can be a champion while smoking, drinking, and partying." It's like, okay, that's fine, I guess.
The people's champion.
Yeah, he really is.
Cigarette companies are just like, clapping their hands hearing that. That's all the propaganda they need.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Moving down to two guys who are completely opposite of that, Beneil Dariush and Benoit Saint-Denis. This is a just absolute lightweight scrap. In my opinion, I keep saying this for every fight, but I love this fight as well. I think this is perfect matchmaking for where both of these guys are at in their career. Opens up a pay-per-view main card. Two guys who, Beneil Dariush is obviously more, and Benoit Saint-Denis tend to be more on the grappling side, but two guys who are willing to throw and two guys who consistently get in fun fights. The betting odds have it with Benoit Saint-Denis is a marginally large favorite, minus 215. Beneil Dariush plus 164. Jerry, I think it's your turn to lead us off here. What do you make of Beneil Dariush and Benoit Saint-Denis?
I will say, as far as this fight card goes, this is probably the fight I'm the least excited about on the main card. Not for anything against it, but it's just these other four fights are so much more exciting. And this one, I'm kind of concerned for Beneil Dariush. I know he looked a bit better against Renato Moicano, but his last two fights with Arman and Charles Oliveira, he did not look good. He looks like the old guy he is, and Benoit Saint-Denis kind of bouncing back after his back-to-back losses, beats looked good against Mauricio Rufy in his last fight. So I think it's kind of another one of those. The old generation's heading out and the new one's coming in. Yet I kind of thought this was going to happen earlier for Beneil Dariush. So I'm not overly confident for Dariush.
I'm the exact opposite, but for the exact reasons too, and it's because I was rooting for Beneil against Moicano, and Beneil Dariush is phenomenal, one of the best takedown defenses I've ever seen. When he faces wrestlers that have to take him down and they can't, he usually wins fight, whether that be against Moicano, against Gamrot. He did get stumbled against Moicano, which, like you said, it's very scary, and that's what makes it hard. But also, Jerry, like you said, he got beat by Arman, beat by Charles. Elite fighters that I think are arguably the best in the division, especially Charles, a couple years ago. BSD was losing to Moicano, who I don't think that's good or is that good, and you could still say a good Poirier, getting a little older. So I just think if Beneil can use his takedown defense, I don't think BSD is going to get his ground and pound that we've seen him get off, or the total control and mauling that he's done to a couple of opponents. Now I am still very worried about Beneil being on the feet with someone on the younger side as BSD, and who's very aggressive out there. But I think maybe one more time the old man can, keep this fight on the ground. Use some wrestling of his own too. I think should still maybe be a move here in this. Anything that just doesn't force him to be on the feet for 15 minutes. Although I do still think Beneil has good striking. I just think that's a dangerous game. But I would take it the same way for him to mix things up like he did against Moicano.
Yeah, I this fight's a weird one because Dariush, I have a lot of respect for his skill level. I think he's very underrated from an actual skills perspective. His grappling is very, very, very elite. But like there's a physicality thing that I think he's missing, and there's a durability thing that I think is just been MIA for a minute here. And in theory, I think Benoit Saint-Denis should run him over. But Benoit Saint-Denis, I like Benoit Saint-Denis. I think he's good. And one of the reasons I think he's good is because he can run people over and just like eat damage and not face the consequences. But he got knocked out by Poirier and then took a lot of damage against Moicano. And those two things like really concern me that he's going to be able to continue taking damage throughout his career. And like, I don't think Beneil's that great of a striker, but I think he hits hard. So like, I wouldn't be surprised if Beneil can line up a shot here and really hurt Benoit. And I wouldn't be surprised if Beneil like just scrambles his ass off into good positions in the grappling. But I just think over 3 rounds, like I think at some point, if as long as Benoit Saint-Denis doesn't get finished like by a big left hand or gets caught in a sub, like I think if that doesn't happen, I think he's going to take so many risks that he's eventually going to land a shot that hurts Benoit enough, or Benoit will land a shot that hurts Dariush enough to where he can finish the fight. Whether it means he can start grappling because he's got Dariush dazed, or he can just keep throwing reckless boxing because he's got Dariush hurt. I just think he's going to take the risks required to take advantage of Beneil's durability. So I think Dariush is probably better, but I think at some point this one is going to swing heavily for Benoit Saint-Denis. So I'm taking Benoit by finish here.
Yeah, I mean, I can see Benoit struggling a bit with the wrestling, but against Dariush, but he's also very good defensive and offensive grappler in his own mind. So,
yeah, I do think I'm going to go with Beneil one more time for the same thing against literally for some of the same parts. The reason of that I chose him against Moicano, although this one scares me a lot more because of BSD's physicality and recklessness too. And like you said, I think didn't Moicano he stumbled him and then shot for a takedown instantly, right?
Yeah.
I think, BSD is going to just continue to recklessly box and probably get him out of there too. He probably just needed one more strike too. So this one does worry me, and I definitely can see, like, this is finally the one where I'm like, okay, BSD just steamrolled him. And I can't pick Beneil, retire, please. You already have gray hair everywhere. But I think if not, I will go. I think I'm still going to go Dariush one more time, and maybe a sneaky sub and all those scrambles.
I will say that's why I'm so interested in this fight, because it's like, what am I going to get out of these two guys? Like, I think these two guys both have like large like outcomes every single fight. Like, both of these guys could like lose in like dramatic fashion, or like look like the best fighter in the world and just be like that's two reasons I love watching both of these guys, is because they're guys it's really tough to know what you're going to get out of them. So makes me appreciate this matchup. That's one of the reasons I like it. All right, let's round out this card with some final thoughts. We have a pretty good prelim section here. Anthony, I think it's your turn to lead us off here. Looking at these prelims, what fights stand out to you, or anything else you want to touch on this UFC 322 card?
I did want to say real quick. I know when we've probably done it before, and I know when me and Jerry did our last podcast, they had Bo Nickel in as the main event, and we were like, please move that to the main event of the prelims, or sorry, in the main card.
Yeah.
And we had said, please move that over to the main event of the prelims, give us BSD, and they actually did. So I appreciate the UFC for at least getting that right, because I don't want to see Bo Nickel, really, or you don't have to force feed him to us anymore. So thank you, RDR, for that at least. But I will say I still like Kopylov. I still think he's a fun striker. I think it was his last one, the loss to – is that Costa?
Yeah.
Okay. So I do still think he's a fun striker. Not the biggest on G-Rod, but definitely also a powerful striker in his own right. I know, he was just checking. He's coming off the Jack Hermanson win by KO. So I think that could be a fun striking matchup. And then I guess the other one I'll do, because I'll let you save a couple for you guys, is seeing Kyle Dawkins in there. Fine. I think I prefer. That's the lighter one. His brother's the little bit bigger and better one. Yeah. Well, I've seen him get knocked up before. I still like Gerald Mearshart. I think he's fun on the ground in his submissions. And then it's weird. He's either gets starched immediately, or he gets in there and actually has a little bit fun back and forth fight on the feet too. So that could be some fun. And then finally, I'll just shout out, Mariscal Chepe. He's had some fun ones too.
Yeah, I think the one I'm really excited about is that Roman Kopylov and G-Rod fight. I think that could be just potential fight of the night, banger energy, or at least performance of the night for someone getting their head knocked clean off. I'm intrigued by the Aaron Blanchfield and Tracy Cortez fight, just to kind of see, because I feel like it's been a while since we've seen Tracy Cortez fight anybody in the top 5 of flyweight. So interested to see how she does competing with someone who we talked previously about. Aaron Blanchfield is potentially going to be a future champion in this division. Hasn't panned out that way quite yet, and a lot of tough people to go ahead of her, but that's one that has huge implications, especially considering the co-main event of the night. And then the other one I wanted to say, I think Slaviklaus Vyacheslav Borshev. I think his nickname's just so funny, and he's usually entertaining enough when he fights. And hopefully we see something fun in that one.
Yeah, you guys throw out a lot of fights that I like, so I just want to touch on the fact that the prelims I think are really, really strong. Prelims and early prelims for that matter, but there's a lot of good fights outside of the main card, so I want to shout that out as well. But then outside of the ones that you guys talked about, Malcolm Wellmaker and Cody Haddon is a tremendous fight. Two guys that I'm high on as prospects. I think on last year's Contender Series rankings, I had Cody Haddon, I think top 5. I think I had him like 3 or 4 of all the signees, and I think I had Wellmaker at 7th. So two guys who I had ranked really highly coming into the UFC. Wellmaker, I think, is 2-0 with 2 brutal knockouts. Cody Haddon's 1-0 with a pretty solid win as well. So two guys who usually don't meet this earlier in the UFC careers, fighting it out to see who the better prospect is. So I'm really intrigued by that fight. And then Bangasur Sukarayev versus Eric Makoniko. Sukarayev is, or I think I'm butchering his name, but regardless of that, he's a guy who was on this season of Contenders, and he was really good. Fought on short notice his first UFC fight. Really impressed with him. He's got a layup here, but I just, that's probably going to be a highlight KO. So for anyone who wants to see a lifeless body in the UFC octagon, that's probably one to turn on really early in the night. And then that will lead into Angela Hill and Fatima Klein. Fatima is probably the best prospect at 115. And could you think of a better test for a prospect than Angela Hill? So that one works out pretty good as well. So a lot of good fights here, and a lot to look forward to on this UFC 322 card, main card, prelims, early prelims. So,
hey, Angela Hill consistently, or at least recently, has won a fight, lost a fight, won a fight,
Yes.
lost a fight, and is lining up for a win. Angela Hill, run to the title starts now.
Wow. I was thinking more Angela Hill run to the retirement home, but hey,
that too.
No, this dude, I don't know how to explain it, but without obviously the knockouts, the same happiness Michael Johnson gives me is how I think about Angela Hill. Like they are gonna lose, but at least the fights can be fun when it's striking and stuff.
Yeah.
But and as much as they look good for 2 fights in a row or win one, they will inevitably lose the next one.
Yeah. At least you don't have to worry about Angela Hill just like, oh my God, Angela just died.
Yeah, that's the. But
Michael Johnson, bad.
Yeah, exactly. He goes out, and then I also don't have to worry about Angela killing someone either. She also doesn't have to highlight knockouts. So.
It's a little give or take there. It's a safer watch, but it limits some of the upside.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to our UFC 322 breakdown. We'll be back next week recapping the card. We will do the main card as well. There will obviously be a ton to discuss, and cross your fingers it's no eye pokes, intentional fouls, robberies, rigged fights, or anything of the matter. So hopefully we get 5 clean fights with undebatable outcomes, and hopefully they are entertaining. So that is the hope for the weekend. But a few other things, make sure to like and subscribe to Vendetta Sports Media on YouTube, and go to the website, vendettasportsmedia.com. You can check out our written work there. We will have the preview with written detail, and all of our official picks will be up there. And I should also get best bets up this week, which will be the return of best bets after a long time of no best bets. So return of best bets, hopefully, for the weekend. So look out for those at vendettasportsmedia.com. And thank you for watching.